Imagine moving to a new town, hoping for a fresh start, and stumbling into the opportunity of a lifetime, an exclusive invite to one of Diddy's legendary parties. Everyone knows about the fame, the decadence, and the A-list crowd, but nothing could have prepared me for what I witnessed. From the moment I stepped onto the party bus, something felt off. The laughter wasn't joyful, the glances weren't friendly, and the mansion we arrived at felt less like a celebration and more like a trap. Inside, the air was thick with excess. The walls seemed to hum with secrets, and the guests indulged in acts that made my stomach churn. But the horror truly began in that dimly lit room, where Diddy offered his own son a prince for a prince to summon a demon of unimaginable power. Everyone thought Diddy was throwing the party for himself. But you're all wrong. It's time to tell you who it was really for. This is wild. Moving to a new town wasn't easy, but I figured I'd make it work. It wasn't my first time starting fresh. Back in college, I'd walked into plenty of rooms full of strangers and come out with friends who felt like family. The trick was simple. You had to put yourself out there. Walk up to someone, throw out a smile, and let the conversation flow. Sure, you'd strike out sometimes, but the odds always tilted in your favor if you kept trying. That same logic brought me to a bar on my first night in town. I'd unpacked just enough boxes to feel like I could breathe and decided I needed to get out, do something, meet someone. Anything to make this unfamiliar place feel a little less lonely. The bar was called The Loft, a sleek little spot nestled between a trendy cafe and a boutique clothing store. The exterior was minimalistic, just a black sign with crisp white lettering, but it gave off an air of quiet exclusivity. I figured it was as good a place as any to start. Inside, the space was a mix of industrial chic and cozy charm. Exposed brick walls framed the room, interrupted only by black and white photos of the town's old skyline. Hanging Edison bulbs cast a soft golden glow over the polished wooden bar. The music playing in the background was subtle, a mix of mellow jazz and lo-fi beats, just loud enough to fill the room without drowning out conversation. I grabbed one of the few empty seats at the bar and ordered a burger and a beer. As I waited for my food, I let my eyes wander across the room. Most of the patrons were gathered in small groups, leaning into their conversations with the kind of ease that comes from years of familiarity. It wasn't surprising. This town didn't exactly scream transient population. The people here seemed settled, rooted, like they'd been meeting at this exact bar every Friday night for decades. At first, I wasn't sure where to start. Striking up a conversation with strangers wasn't exactly easy when everyone already seemed to know each other. That night, I eventually spotted Adrian laughing with Logan and Hunter in the corner. Nearby, Dylan was chatting with Lila Donahue, while Sophia Moreno leaned against the bar, watching Jennifer glide through the crowd with that effortless charm only she possessed. Somehow I knew this night was going to change everything. Everyone already seemed to know each other, but then my attention landed on one table in particular, and my gut told me this was my shot. The table was tucked into the corner, surrounded by four guys who looked like they'd walked straight out of a GQ photo shoot. They were dressed sharply in tailored jackets and slim-fit shirts, their confidence practically radiating across the room. While everyone else in the bar looked relaxed and casual, these guys stood out. It wasn't just the way they looked, it was the way they carried themselves. At first I couldn't hear much, just a few low murmurs and bursts of laughter. But then their voices carried over the hum of the bar. "You don't just walk into a Diddy party," one of them said, his tone almost reverent. "Wild King night, man," another chimed in. "It's not even close to anything you've ever been to." Trust me. The words lodged themselves in my mind. I didn't know much about Diddy beyond his music and celebrity status. But the way these guys talked about this party, it sounded legendary. I could feel my curiosity building, a spark of intrigue that made my pulse quicken. Whatever they were talking about, it wasn't the kind of thing a regular guy like me got to hear about every day. As I watched, their waitress arrived and dropped off the check. They barely glanced at it, still deep in conversation. That was my cue. I stood up, grabbed my beer, and made my way over to their table, stopping just close enough to get their attention. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual but loud enough to cut through their conversation. "Let me get that for you." The group turned to look at me, their faces a mix of confusion and amusement. One of them, a guy with a neatly trimmed beard, raised an eyebrow. "What?" he asked, half laughing. "I'll cover your tab," I said with a shrug, trying to play it cool. "I'm new in town, and you guys seem like you know how to have a good time. Consider it my way of saying hi." For a moment, they just stared at me, and I felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe I'd overstepped. Maybe they'd laugh me off or tell me to mind my own business. Then the guy sitting at the Head of the table, a sharp-looking man with slicked back hair and an air of authority, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "You don't even know us, man," he said, his tone amused but curious. "True," I replied, matching his smirk with a small smile of my own. "But I'm just trying to meet people. And honestly, that party you're talking about? It sounds insane." He studied me for a moment, his smirk widening. Then he slapped the table and turned to the others. "All right, I like this guy. What's your name?" "Dylan." "Well, Dylan," he said, leaning forward, "you might be in luck. We're heading to that party tonight. You want to roll with us?" My stomach flipped, excitement and nerves tangling together in my chest. "Absolutely," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The table erupted in laughter, the kind of rowdy, infectious energy that made you feel like you were in on the joke, even if you didn't know the punchline. One of the guys raised his glass. "Mock toast to Dylan," he said, grinning. "Boldest guy in the bar." I grinned back, relief washing over me. It felt good to be included, to be welcomed into the fold. As they clinked their glasses and started filling me in on the plan for the night, I let myself relax. But as the night unfolded, that moment at the bar would stand out in my memory like a warning. I didn't listen to it at the time. I thought I was hitting the jackpot, a chance to meet new people. Maybe even rub shoulders with celebrities at a party I'd never forget. I had no idea how right I was. The music on the party bus was loud enough to rattle my chest, each bass drop pounding through me like a second heartbeat. It wasn't the kind of music I usually listen to. Aggressive, thumping beats that felt designed to drown out everything else. Normally, I would have taken it as a good sign, a signal that the night was about to go full tilt. But something about the vibe on that bus felt wrong. I glanced around. There were about 15 of us packed into the sleek interior. And though the music blasted from every corner, no one seemed to care. No dancing. No drinks being passed around. No one even nodding to the beat. Instead, almost everyone was hunched over their phones, the cold glow of their screens lighting up their faces. Occasionally, one of the guys would glance up, lock eyes with someone else, and they'd laugh. Not the kind of laugh you share when someone tells a joke. This was quieter. More knowing, like they were sharing a secret I wasn't part of. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself I was overthinking things. But the knot in my stomach kept growing. An uncomfortable twist that wouldn't go away. I leaned toward the guy next to me. Hunter, I thought his name was. He was big, broad-shouldered, with the kind of jawline that looked like it had been carved out of stone. "What's so funny?" I asked, keeping my tone light. He glanced up from his phone, his grin faltering for just a second before snapping back, sharp and toothy. "Don't worry about it," he said, nudging me with his elbow. "You're going to love this party." "Yeah," another guy chimed in from across the aisle. He was lounging with his legs spread wide, his phone resting on his knee. "It's a night you'll never forget." There was something in his voice that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't reassuring, it was more like a challenge. Like he was daring me to find out just how unforgettable this night would be. I nodded, forcing a smile, and leaned back in my seat. The leather upholstery was cool against my palms, but it didn't do much to steady my nerves. I tapped my foot to the beat of the music, trying to focus on anything other than the unease gnawing at me. The bus rolled on, leaving the bright city lights behind. The streets grew darker, quieter, lined with towering trees that loomed over us like silent sentinels. I watched out the window as we turned onto a narrow, winding road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. With every passing minute, it felt like we were leaving the real world behind, heading into some shadowy limbo. I glanced at Hunter again, hoping for some kind of reassurance. But he was back on his phone, his grin fixed in place like it had been painted on. The other guys were the same, silent, scrolling, occasionally chuckling to themselves. Finally, the bus slowed, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. We turned a corner, and the mansion came into view. My breath caught in my throat. It was massive, the kind of place that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover or in a music video. Soft golden lights illuminated the sprawling facade, making the entire building glow against the night sky. The driveway was lined with cars, sleek, expensive machines that probably cost more than my apartment. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Lamborghinis, brands I'd only ever seen in movies. But what really caught my attention was the line of women outside the gates. Dozens of them, all dressed in outfits that left little to the imagination. They stood shivering in the cool night air, heels clicking against the cobblestones as they shifted from foot to foot. Some spoke in low voices. Others just stared straight ahead, their faces unreadable. As the bus came to a stop, the driver didn't bother to announce our arrival. Hunter clapped me on the back, pulling me out of my daze. "Welcome to Wild King Night," he said, his voice loud, almost mocking. I hesitated as I stepped off the bus and onto the gravel driveway. The cool air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to clear the fog in my head. I turned to Hunter, my voice shaky. What kind of party is this?" The group erupted into laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter that put you at ease. It was sharp and cutting, like they were all in on a joke I wasn't part of. "You really don't know, do you?" Hunter said, shaking his head as if I'd just said the dumbest thing imaginable. Before I could respond, another guy spoke up. "Diddy's parties aren't for the faint of heart, man. This is a freak-off, Wild King style. You're in it now." No backing out. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. I tried to laugh along, but it came out hollow and forced. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to turn around, to get back on the bus, to walk away from whatever this was. But I didn't. Instead, I followed the group toward the mansion, my steps heavy and reluctant. The air seemed thicker here, pressing down on me like a physical weight. As we approached the gates, I glanced again at the women standing in line. Some looked at me with blank expressions, their eyes dull and glassy. Others averted their gazes entirely, staring at the ground as if they wanted to disappear. A wave of nausea rose in my chest. What the hell had I gotten myself into? The gate swung open with a soft creak and we stepped inside. The driveway led to a massive set of double doors, flanked by 2 security guards who looked like they belonged in a UFC cage. They barely glanced at us as we passed, their expressions cold and detached. Inside, the mansion was even more opulent than I'd imagined. The foyer! The foyer was massive, with a crystal chandelier, hanging from the ceiling and marble floors that gleamed under the soft light. People milled about, talking and laughing, but there was an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite place. I tried to stick close to Hunter and the others, but they seemed to blend into the crowd almost immediately, leaving me to fend for myself. I stood there, frozen, trying to get my bearings. The music was louder here, pulsing through the walls like a heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of perfume, and something else, something sharper, more acrid. I couldn't quite place it, but it made my nose sting. "Come on, man," Hunter called over his shoulder, waving me forward. "The night's just getting started." I nodded, forcing my feet to move, but deep down, I knew this wasn't a party. It was something else entirely. The atmosphere felt suffocating. Dim lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, and the air was thick with a nauseating mixture of perfume, sweat, and a faint metallic scent I couldn't identify. My first instinct was to stay close to Hunter and the others, but they'd already disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to navigate the chaos on my own. As I moved through the rooms, the sick feeling in my stomach grew. People were indulging in every excess imaginable. Glass tables were covered with neat lines of white powder, with people leaning over them casually, like it was just another night out. Bottles of champagne, whiskey, and tequila were scattered across every surface, some tipped over, their contents spilling onto the marble floors. But what really made me uneasy was the way people were acting. Men and women were tangled together on couches and pressed against walls, their movements desperate and animalistic. It wasn't just hedonism. It felt performative, like they were putting on a show for someone unseen. Laughter rose and fell in bursts, high-pitched and shrill, punctuated by shouts and moans that seemed to echo unnaturally through the house. I caught sight of a man sitting in a corner, his shirt unbuttoned, a glazed look in his eyes as 2 women draped themselves over him. His hand clutched a bottle of something clear, his fingers trembling as he raised it to his lips. Across the room, a woman in a sequin dress stood on a table, dancing erratically as a crowd cheered her on. A wave of nausea rolled through me. This wasn't a party. It was a spectacle, a grotesque display of excess that made me feel more like an intruder than a guest. A hand brushed against my arm and I flinched. A woman in a skin-tight dress leaned in close, her perfume almost choking me. "You look lost," she said, her lips curling into a slow smile. Her eyes were sharp, almost predatory. In her hand, I noticed a small glass vial filled with a clear liquid. I just need some air," I stammered, stepping back. Her smile didn't falter. "Don't take too long," she said, her voice low and mocking. I forced myself to move, weaving through the crowd until I found a quieter part of the house. My hands were shaking and my breathing felt shallow. I needed to get out of there, at least for a little while. Eventually, I found myself at the end of a long hallway. It was quieter here, the noise from the main hall muffled and distant. At the very end, a door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling out into the corridor. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside. The room was small and dimly lit. lined with flickering candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and something sweeter, like burnt sugar. In the center of the room was a bed draped in black silk, with a man lying motionless on it. My heart raced as I stood there, unsure whether I should leave or stay. Before I could decide, someone approached me silently. I hadn't even heard them enter. Without saying a word, they handed me a black robe. I hesitated, looking down at the heavy fabric in my hands. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but the person's gaze was unwavering, almost daring me to refuse. Not wanting to draw attention to myself, I slipped the robe on and moved to a corner of the room, hoping to blend into the shadows. The room began to fill with people, all wearing similar black robes, their faces partially obscured by hoods. They moved with purpose, their steps silent on the plush carpet. Then the door opened again, and my breath caught in my throat. Diddy entered, flanked by a group of people. I recognized immediately. Celebrities, rappers, singers, actors, the kind of people you only see on red carpets or magazine covers. I spotted Jennifer among them, her hood pulled low over her face. She didn't look at anyone, her gaze fixed straight ahead as she followed Diddy to the center of the room. Diddy stepped forward, his presence commanding. He raised his arms and the room fell into a heavy silence. "Tonight," he began, his voice smooth and powerful, "we honor Paimon. Through him we rise above." A murmur swept through the room, low and reverent. My chest tightened as the air grew heavier, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. Diddy turned toward the bed, gesturing to the man lying motionless on it. As I looked closer, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just any man. It was his son, Adrian. Adrian lay there silently, his face unreadable, as if he'd already accepted his role in whatever this was. Diddy spread his arms wide, his voice ringing with conviction. "Behold the true wild king, my son Adrian." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "With this, we take one step closer to raising all the kings of hell, one step closer to the overall plan." The candles dimmed and the air rippled like a heat wave. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then I saw it. A shadow began forming in the center of the room. It grew and twisted, taking on a shape that sent a chill down my spine. The figure was tall and regal, its form flickering between solid and ethereal. A golden crown sat atop its head, gleaming even in the dim light. Its face was shrouded in darkness save for its eyes, which glowed with an otherworldly light. Around its neck hung a chain of burning sigils, their glow casting eerie patterns on the walls. This was Paimon, one of the 9 kings of hell. I'd heard the name before, in whispers and old stories, but nothing could have prepared me for this. Paimon was said to be a being of immense power, a commander of legions of spirits, capable of granting wealth, influence, and forbidden knowledge to those who summoned him. Diddy stepped closer, his voice unwavering. "Paimon, we call upon you to strengthen our bonds, to elevate us beyond mortal constraints, and tonight we offer you a worthy vessel." Paimon's glowing eyes fixed on Adrian, and the room seemed to grow colder. The demon raised one shadowy hand and rested it gently on Adrian's forehead. The silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then Paimon spoke. Its voice was low and guttural, reverberating through the walls. "Sign." The single word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but every fiber of my being screamed that it was not good. Diddy's smile widened, a look of triumph flashing across his face. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there. But my legs felt rooted to the floor. All I could do was watch, helpless, as the ritual unfolded before me. I didn't wait to see what happened next. The second Paimon uttered that bone-chilling word, sign, something inside me snapped, like a buried survival instinct finally kicking in. I slipped out of the room as quietly as I could, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like a miracle no one heard it. I moved quickly, but I didn't dare run. Not yet. My hands trembled as I clenched them into fists, forcing myself to blend in. I kept my head down and slowed my breathing, knowing that panic would draw attention. The noise of the party grew louder as I approached the main hall, the chaotic symphony of laughter, music, and shouts crashing over me like a wave. For a fleeting moment, I thought I'd be safe in the crowd, that I could disappear into the chaos. But that sickening feeling of being watched never left me. I couldn't shake the sense that eyes were following me, tracking my every move. I pushed through the throng, ignoring the grotesque scenes unfolding around me. A man in a designer suit snorted something off the back of a woman's hand while she giggled, her head tilted back unnaturally. Nearby, a group gathered around a table where someone had passed out. Their cheers and laughter, almost drowning out the muffled cries of someone else slumped in the corner. With every step, the air felt thicker, my stomach twisting into tighter knots. I was almost at the door when I collided with someone. A woman grabbed my arm to steady herself. Her eyes locked onto mine immediately, sharp, searching. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. I don't know," I stammered, unable to keep the tremor out of my voice. Her expression shifted as she looked me over, her gaze narrowing. "You don't belong here," she whispered. So quiet I had to lean in to hear her. "If you don't leave now, you'll never get out. That's how these parties work." Her words sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Before I could respond, she pressed something into my hand. It was small and smooth, a card. "Take this," she said, glancing over her shoulder, as if she was afraid someone was watching. "Go, don't stop until you're far away." I nodded, muttering a shaky thank you, and then she stepped back into the crowd and vanished. I turned toward the door, my grip tightening around the card as I pushed forward. This time, I didn't care if I bumped into someone or looked suspicious. I just needed to get out. The moment I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap to the face. I gasped, my chest heaving as I tried to steady myself. The mansion loomed behind me, its glowing windows like watchful eyes, and I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I broke into a run, my footsteps crunching against the gravel driveway as I put as much distance as I could between myself and that house. I didn't stop until I reached the end of the street, where the glow of the mansion faded into darkness. Only then did I pull out my phone and call for an Uber. My hands were trembling so badly it took me 3 tries to type in the address. When the car arrived, I practically collapsed into the back seat, gasping for air. "You okay, man?" the driver asked, glancing at me through the rearview mirror. "Yeah," I lied, my voice hoarse. "Just a long night." He didn't press me, and for that I was grateful. The ride home was quiet, but my mind was anything but. The events of the night replayed in my head like a nightmare on a loop. The mansion, the party, the ritual, Paimon's glowing eyes. It felt unreal, like something out of a twisted fever dream. But I knew it wasn't. I could still feel the weight of the air in that room, the way it pressed down on me, crushing the breath from my lungs. I could still see Diddy standing there, his arms raised in triumph as he proclaimed his son the Wild King. I could still hear Paimon's voice, that low, guttural command that seemed to reverberate through my entire body. "Sign." The word echoed in my mind, making me shudder. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew it wasn't good. Whatever they were planning, whatever their overall plan was, it wasn't something I wanted to be anywhere near. I leaned my head back against the seat, trying to focus on the hum of the car engine, anything to drown out the memories. Then I remembered the card. I pulled it out of my pocket and held it up to the dim light of a passing street lamp. It was simple and elegant, a black card with gold lettering that gleamed faintly in the dark. There was only one thing printed on it, a name, Sofia Moreno. I stared at the name, my mind racing. Who was she? Why had that woman given me this card? Did she know something about what was really happening in that house? I whispered the name to myself, testing how it felt on my tongue. Sofia Moreno. The name sent a chill through me, and I felt a strange sense of unease, as if saying it out loud had somehow changed something. I slipped the card back into my pocket, my fingers lingering on its smooth surface for a moment before pulling away. The rest of the ride passed in a blur. By the time the car pulled up to my building, my legs felt weak and my mind was still spinning. I thanked the driver and stumbled up to my apartment, locking the door behind me with shaking hands. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the card once more. One question burned in my mind, louder than all the others. Who is Sofia Moreno?